Good afternoon. It is so good to be back again. And this is Seth Moore coming to you here on Anchor by Spotify. It is a chilly, sunny 41 degrees day here in the Love State, and I hope wherever you are having a great day. Take it that you've had lunch, you've gone out, maybe some of your coworkers, and I don't know whether or not it's too chilly to sit outside, but it would seem though it is. So you're going back into the office and you're going back into your workstations and wherever you are. And this day, prayerfully, has been a good one thus far. And so today we're going to be talking about the banking situation. We just had a major SVB bank that closed down in Silicon Valley, which is major to the economy. And I want you to understand, because we've mentioned some things in the line of BRICS before and how the BRICS alliance has been formed with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and of late, many more countries that have actually put in their applications have come in to join this Eastern Bloc named BRICS, such as Venezuela, United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Turkey, and a host of others who have come to join BRICS. And of course, this banking closing and mismanaged bank obviously is affecting that. And it's a part of this whole movement. And I want you to understand how by design this is relevant to not only de-dollarizing the dollar, which BRICS has made a play actually to do and is already in the process of doing, and is gaining great momentum. But at the same time, this latest episode with this bank closing down, and this bank particularly funds startups. And this bank had within assets of some $209 billion. And startup assets revenue in terms of how many startups that they funded is in the estimation of something like $3 trillion. So this is major. This is real major. And I want you to know just how major this is in regards to, those of us who are putting our money in banks, and what this means. But before we get started, I would say to you to be very careful about your money in terms of how you trust your money in banks. And I've said this before, so if you have a small amount of money, and some would say that you can actually afford to lose. It's kind of like investing. When you invest in, stocks, or, you have some, precious metals that you might invest in, such as gold, platinum, silver, whatever you choose to invest in, you normally invest in, and of course everyone invests to gain a profit, but they always say invest what you can lose, and so that you won't walk away so hurt and so devastated, because oftentimes what happens is people invest their whole life in a lot of these institutions, and when they come out on the short end, you know what some people do? They go and jump off a building, or they blow their brains out, because they went all in. And so, you know, I haven't, been a huge investor for a long, long period of time, but I do have some investments, and they're relatively, you know, medium range, where if I outright lost, I'm not going to be devastated. You know what I mean? But you invest what you can, and you invest what you can afford to lose, because you don't want to invest your entire savings in something, or your entire portfolio, or if you have one, your entire savings of your life savings, your complete 401k. It's because if you lose it, then of course you're done. You're back at the drawing board, and then it's harder to gain finances or more money to invest. So, and given the fact that the dollar is in a decline, it's still holding some strength, to the point, because of course, the dollar is currently the strongest currency on the planet, but it's losing value every day. And what I would even say, I would even venture to go on and say this: that is because of what's going on in the marketplace and how stocks are plummeting, and they're telling you don't be afraid. And I told you this before. You got to pay attention to the language. When they tell you don't be afraid, then it's time for you to be afraid. And I don't say this to want you to go into a posture of fear, because, again, you know who you are. I've given many podcasts about who you are. So you should stand in that strength alone and know that you're going to be taken care of no matter what happens in the market. Because if you trust this market, and you trust everything in this market, then of course when it fails, you're going to be one of those individuals who are going to be totally devastated. So your trust can't be in this. Your trust got to be in a greater source. And we've talked about that. Your trust has to be in a greater source than dependent on these institutions, because when they collapse, guess what? You have to have your trust in something else. Who do you trust? Who do you really trust? And so, your trust got to be in a higher power. You know what I mean? And so we're going to get into it in a minute. I just want to get some things together here, and we're going to move on. But like I said again, these days you better have your trust in something higher than you, or higher than your pocketbook, because when this economy collapses, you better have your trust. See, because most people's trust is in their pocketbook. Most people's trust is in, something that can perish in 5 seconds. That's where most people have their trust. And as you already know, we live in a world today where people are, in the way the system has been set up, it's kind of like it kind of doesn't leave you a whole lot of wiggle room. But again, it's so messed up, and it's so it's so messed up to the point where you like, what hell am I to do? You know what I mean? You have children, you have things that you obviously have to attend to every day and every month, and like we all do, and so you kind of like, you could be tossed a little bit. What will I do if this happens? What will I do if that happens? And like I said, you just got to have your trust in something higher than you, and know that, no matter what happens, the Creator, he'll create, and this is how I look at it, because I like to think that I walk closely, in the mindset of the Creator, where he'll make bread out of a stone for me. I don't know about you, but and I've been through some real situations in my life, and he's come through. or if you want to use a duality, he, she, it's come through all the time. And so, but again, when people have their trust in all of these things, you know, um, and we live in such a vain world now. The world is so vain. I ain't never seen so many vain people in my life. I mean, it's just so vain. And that's why sometimes I take the attitude is it's better not to be seen sometimes. You know, and so, okay, you see me now. I want to, I'm still alive, but sometimes it's better not to be seen, because you don't want to be caught up in the fray. You really don't, you know, because there's a lot going on, and you want to be away from anything that can hamper your growth. Because if you're not on a growth quest spiritually, and you can be on a growth quest, as far as your career, financially. But let me drop this on you, and this is real game. You better not be putting your trust in all of this stuff. I'm telling you, you better have a better foundation, because when shit hits the fan, pardon the vernacular, then what are you going to do? See, because if you have all your trust, and see, the problem with us is you've been told this before. You've been told this in the good book. He told you, don't put your trust in this and that and the other. But a lot of us, our trust is hinged on this world. You got so many people, unfortunately, who are so worldly, claim to be, and like I said, the problem with a lot of you is you're religious. You're not spiritual. You're religious, and that's why you are the way you are, because you're religious. See, and the only thing that separates you, and it really doesn't separate you from the world, because going to a building does not separate you from what's in the world if all of your attributes mirror the world. You follow me? If your attributes mirror everything that's in the world, then you're not really growing. Look at yourself. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad or to be pejorative or anything like that. But if your attitude and your ways and your character mirrors the world, then you're not growing, because that mirror in the world, everybody's doing the same thing. It says that men will become lovers of themselves more than lovers of the Creator. People love themselves more than anything. There's so much vanity in the world that is unreal. I look at people, posing on social media. They always got the camera in their face, taking pictures of their body, taking pictures of their hair, taking pictures of their face, and all of us take pictures, but sometimes you got to tone it down. And then I even say to myself, I'll put a picture up, and then after a couple of days, I'll delete it. I'll remove it. Like I said, because it's better sometimes not to be seen. And then I'll go on sometimes on my phone, and I'll start removing pictures. Bleep, 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 bleep. Because you don't want to be caught in the mind of vanity. Because if you're doing that, you're not pleasing anything that's spiritual. You're only in, and I didn't really mean to take up a lot of time talking about this, but I guess I'm feeling that I have to go this way. You're only in your own ego mind. That's what that is. You're only in your ego mind. And what is that? That's nothing. You're in your ego mind. We had a podcast about that. Okay, so anyways, we're going to move on. Give me a moment and we'll continue. Okay, we're back. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, I just want to read some stuff to you, and we're going to come back with a follow-up. Okay. Bank stock fell on Monday on worries about what may be next to topple following the second and third largest bank failures in U.S. history. But much of the rest of the markets rose on hopes the bloodletting will force the Federal Reserve to take it easier on its economy rather than hikes to interest rates. The S&P 500 dipped 6 points or 0.2% after whipsaw trading, where it careened from an early loss of 1.4% to a midday gain of nearly that much. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 90 points or 0.3, while the NASDAQ Composite rose 0.4%. Okay, fallout from Silicon Valley bank collapse ripples across the industry. So now, what I was saying to you, and why this is so volatile, and I'm not an economist, but I have common sense, because I know the word economy comes from the Greek or the Latin economia, okay? And so you don't really have an economy unless you have rich people trading where poor people can get money or what have you. Because if everybody has money, then you don't have an economy. And that's what happened with Mansa Musa when he went through Egypt, back in the 13th century. He gave out so much gold, he collapsed the economy. So, unfortunately, economy does not work with everybody having money or with everybody being on the same tier. You have to have, unfortunately, poor people. And that sounds bad, right? But it's true. And this is why Yeshua said, the poor you would have with you always. Okay? And it's a not a pretty thing, but it's the way of the world. You have to have poor people to have an economy, because you have to have poor people who are trying to get money. Okay? And this is why they say the rich get richer and what? The poor get poorer. And that's just a bad thing, but it's the way of our world. Okay, so now, what is going on is, if you've been listening to other podcasts that were being given when we were talking about Brits a month or more ago, even maybe a couple of months ago, one of the big things is what was happening, and I'll read some of this to you as well, is that China was selling off or getting rid of 1 trillion US dollars worth of bonds. They were getting rid of bonds in the tune of $1 trillion. Okay, and so was Japan. Japan was also getting rid of U.S. bonds that they were holding. And so what they say is treasuries are the safest way to go when you have huge amount of investment, okay? Because it protects, quote unquote, your dollars. But as we can see, it hasn't done a great job. So the fallout ripple effect that's actually happening, it says here, the startling collapse, okay, and a bid to contain the risk of contagion, financial regulators announced Sunday that they will guarantee all deposits at the bank, while President Biden, of course, Monday, he says all Americans can be confident, but I told you, don't listen to that when you hear that, okay, on the latest. So now what's going on is that you have thousands of people, and particularly, as I was saying a moment ago, and who invest in this bank, and this bank mostly is a tech bank where they fund startups. and they had in assets in the tune of $3 trillion in terms of how many rather startups that they funded, and then they had in assets, 209 billion. That's a lot of money. So I was listening to some people, and you had people saying that, I was listening to this one lady who had a small business, but her business is making millions. And she said she had like over 10 million invested in this bank. But what's going to happen is the FIDC or the FDIC is going to allow them to withdraw money that's uninsured, because you can only insure so much money in a bank, right? And then of course when it comes to millions, what a bank will do, if I'm correct, is that your money is offshore. Your money, they're not holding your $10 million or more in that bank. That bank is, to secure that money, the insurances on that money are in other places. Okay, so they're going to allow these people to get out, and you're going to only be able to get out $250,000. So the bank is not going to give you. It ain't like you're going to pull up to no bank and no van, and you coming out of there with bags of money. That ain't going to happen. That ain't the way it works. So for those cause I was listening where they say they will allow them to get $250,000 out for those who, these business owners. So because they have to pay employees and so forth, so on and so on. Okay, and they have to pay their bills. But this is serious, y'all, because just think about it. This is a major bank, and you're talking about a bank that funnels all this money through, and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of employees that work for a lot of these tech companies. So there's a lot of panic that's happening right now, and people are running saying, I'm getting my money out of this bank. I'm getting my money, because they see what's coming. And this is just the beginning, but what is actually happening is that the powers that be are laying the groundwork for this new world order, where we become a cashless society. That's actually what's going on. And I hope you can see that, because all the talk and commentary around, devising a new way of currency, or devising a new way in which we are purchasing, where we barter, trades and goods and services, And so they have right now in play where, and they already have it in some states, where you just go in and swipe, you don't even use a card. You know what I'm saying? And so I hope you're paying attention what's going on, because you can't put your hope and trust in this paper fiat currency, because it's losing value. And look what's going on in the world. And so all of these people who are entertainers and celebrities and so forth and so on, what happens? And they a lot of them, of course, have investments, and but if there's no economy, and you have to purchase stuff, and they're not allowing you to purchase it with this fiat currency, how many people are going to come to a merchant and they got gold or silver? Not a whole lot. You're going to only have a select amount of people who are going to be able to barter like that. And there's only going to be a select amount of people who can say, well, I have XYZ amount of gold, or I have an XYZ amount of silver, or platinum, or this or that, or diamonds, or, there are not a whole lot of people, unfortunately, because again, we're dealing in an economy where you have poor people and you have rich people and you have middle of the road people. So, I mean, that's just all it is, you know, and that's the real world. So, you know, while all of this is happening and taking place, they're laying the groundwork again for this new, you know, dynamic to unfold and to manifest itself. But it's not going to be right away. But see, what you have to understand is this too, is they're testing the market to see how people respond. There's always a reason. Remember that. This is not by happenstance. There's always a play and how they do stuff. And so when they doing it like this, trust me, it's by design. It's by design. And you want to know, again, you want to know exactly what's going on. You don't want to be walking around in the dark and not having a clue. So, you know, because we have so many people who are so caught up in all this stuff in the world, so caught up, you know, with all this stuff. And again, I'm not, like I said, I'm not knocking no one. I'm just being real. You know, your attention is on the wrong stuff a lot of times. And you got to balance this stuff out. You got to really manage it well. You got to manage your life with what's going on in the world. And you got to manage your spiritual life. And you got to know when to hold them and you got to know when to fold them. Straight out. You know what I mean? And you have a lot of people who are getting off the grid, so to speak. And I think that's smart. That is genius. You know, people are getting off the grid. I was listening to this one young lady who and her husband, they bought 25 acres in Mexico. They bought 25 acres where they're putting in their own water well. They're farming chickens. They're getting ready to do an under silo green garden where they grow vegetables and fruit. You know what I mean? And she said they're purchasing the seed. And I'm telling you, that is, that's genius. See, because when it comes down to it, if you are so dependent on this system here, and something catastrophic happens where the water treatment systems that we depend on to flush our toilets and to run water in the sink, you know, to take a shower, what if something happens when you can't use that? And we've already seen crises like in, you know, Flint, Michigan with the bad water, and Mississippi with the bad water. I've done podcasts on that. What happens if that happens? Will you be able to live outside of your house or your apartment? Can you actually go in the woods and survive? Would you be able to survive? Straight out, for real. Would you be able to go out and take your family and go out there and be able to build you a lodge and know how to survive and live off the land? Would you be able to do that? A lot of us will lose our damn mind. A lot of us will lose our natural born mind. We wouldn't know what to do because we're so dependent on the way they got this system set up. They're so dependent. I'm a survivor. I would survive. I would survive. Trust me. I know. Yes. And I don't say that to be braggadocious, but I know. Because I've been through some stuff that, yeah, I would survive. So it behooves us to know that, okay, I'm preparing, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to go out and get me XYZ amount of water, get me some canned tuna, you know, get me some beans or what have you, and stock up. Because if the shit hits the fan, I'm going to be ready. You have your stuff, you got you a backpack, you got you a tent, I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm just gonna leave it there. But um, it may come down to that, because the way this world is and the way it's going is that we're moving in that direction because they know they know that most people are dependent on this system, and that dependence, what it breeds is it breeds that they'll be able to have control over you. So when they say, okay, when the trucks stop rolling, the trucks stop rolling that brings the food in to supermarkets and so forth and so on. If that stops, then what? What happens? Hello? What happens? Will you be able to survive? Okay, so I'm gonna move on. So again, it says Silicon Valley Bank, SVB, the 16th largest U.S. bank with 210 billion in assets, as I said earlier, was seized by California regulators on Friday after depositors rushed to withdraw funds over concerns the bank might become insolvent. It is the second biggest bank failure in U.S. history and the largest since the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation was forced to take control of Washington's Mutual in 2008. Remember that? During the subprime housing crash. Okay, remember that. Y'all remember that. We all do. And the reason why this bank is so huge is because, again, it's the tech sector of our economy. Okay, we're all tech, such as Google, Microsoft, all the ones that we depend on for phones and laptops and computers and all of this social media stuff. We're talking about all of these tech giants, Google, Facebook, and countless others. Sequoia. There are many, many, and they have hundreds of thousands and millions of employees around the U.S. and in the world, okay, that depend on getting paid. So the collapse spooked customers at other banks, including clients with deposits exceeding FDIC's $250,000 deposit insurance limit, and raised concern about possible runs at other financial institutions, heightening those fears. New York State regulators on Sunday shuttled Signature's Bank, the third biggest failure in U.S. banking history. That bank also went down. Another bank, Silvergate Capital, also blew up last week, although that preceded SVB's failure and stemmed from losses tied to the struggles of cryptocurrency customers like bankrupt FTX and Genesis. The government did not take control of Silvergate, which chose to liquidate. Now listen to that. They had to liquidate all their assets. Okay? And of a lot of us, a lot of you, rather, who invested in crypto, you can't trust none of this stuff. For those who got into crypto and made their money and got out, that was smart. But a lot of people still have their money in crypto because crypto is not fiat. It's not fiat currency. And so it's electronic money. So, there's no guarantees in that, as you can see. So Biden says Americans, he said they can rest assured. But I'm telling you, don't believe that. He said that the system is secure. But Yellen, the Federal Reserve Secretary, she is the one, along with others, who they had to hype up interest rates. And this was a big component of why this bank, with other, things involved, of course, collapsed. Yellen, she said she rules out bailouts for Silicon Valley. They're not gonna bail this bank out. Regulators closed New York Signature's bank following Silicon Valley's bank collapse. Listen to this. What is the government doing? The government, the FDIC, Federal Reserve, and Department of Treasury said in a joint statement on Sunday, the U.S. will guarantee deposits of both SVB and Signature. So they're going to give their people their money. So they got to pay bills, pay their employees. So they'll be able to get. But what about those people who have billions invested, or hundreds of millions, or tens of millions? Will they get their money? It's worth noting that the FDIC is required by law to resolve a failed bank while moving to protect depositors. The government said that the SVB customers, most of which are small and mid-sized technology companies, will be able to tap their funds and starting on Monday. Now, let me say this, and I'm not doing this to be, racist or anything, but we already know that most of these tech banks, most of these tech companies, and the people who have their money in these banks don't look like us. So we know that a lot of this depends on these people's jobs and keeping these companies going so that they can pay their employees. But of course, the backlash of this is going to be layoffs, and unemployment is going to go up. It's going to happen. It's going to happen because now there's a lot of fear in the market now. And when there's fear in the market, people start selling off their stuff. You know what I'm saying? They start dipping, you know what I mean? And so that's what you have. But of course, Biden said he quickly took the idea to bail out for the SVB off the table. So that's off the table. They're not bailing out no one. And it says the optics of Washington again riding to rescue the bankers, as Obama administration did during the 2008 financial crisis. The Treasury, Janet Yellen, said the taxpayers won't be on the hook for any losses related to disposing of SVB, seeking the... You believe that? You believe that? You're talking about $210 billion, right? So you might as well, it's coming. It's coming. So look for it, and like I said, just prepare yourself as best you can, So what we're going to do, we're going to pause and we're going to come back because we want to follow up on the last podcast when we were talking about our series. So please smash that button, like, share, subscribe. We would appreciate you guys as always. We're always listening to uncopyrighted music. Remember that. We are here to bring into your hearing the latest news here on World News at Anchored by Spotify. Seth Moore. So stay with us, and we're going to be back in a few moments, and we'll continue. Okay.